Good morning, colleagues, to the audience, especially those who have joined us at this point. Welcome to our second webinar of the mSCOA webinar series, which we are doing both as the Future Cities Africa and the Municipal Edge in collaboration with National Treasury. On behalf of the Municipal Edge and the Future Cities Africa, welcome, as I've indicated, and we've framed and aligned this series with our normal local government conversations, especially given the fact that it's our 5th anniversary in that collaboration, delivering those webinars that ensure that we continue with the revolution and evolution of contributing to the landscape and the change that we want in our municipalities. Then, my brother, the past 4 years have contributed immensely to some of the positive developments that we continue to see within our local government today. Let's continue to be part of the revolution, as I've indicated, of being a medium for solutions that are targeting our local modern day challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Zolani and the surname is Zonyane, editorial director, webinar curator and moderator at the Municipal Edge. And it's important to say I'm a SIGFARO member in good standing. By so, I encourage those of you who qualify to be members, not to miss the drive by SIGFARO at the moment of the 5,000 members reaching this year. So please do take that offer so that we can continue with a more professionalized local government, as we say, because without associating ourselves to specific institutions or institutional bodies in terms of professional development, we are defeating that purpose. As I've indicated, we've also have Dan in the background together with the team who are taking care of all the technical aspects, the invitations that you received, also the communication that you often get to the webinars themselves. Thanks, Dan, once more. Without you, we will not have come this far. Most importantly, our sincere appreciation also goes to our platinum sponsor, Business Engineering, for the continued support, Philip and Tim, that you have continued over the years. And again, looking at today, we will not have had this webinar. And we often say to our audience, these webinars are free, yes, to the audience, but without your support and contribution, we wouldn't be where we are. And with all your other entities that are involved in the space, and we've decided today, let's lift Phoenix ERP. We also recognize our partners. As you can see, since we've started, SIGFARO has been the partner to the conversations, and SALGA have come that far with this medium in terms of what we do. We do appreciate that support. We also have the Center for Municipal Asset Management, IMSA, that being the Institute for Municipal Personnel Practitioners of Southern Africa, and of course the Institute for Local Government Management, that being ILGM. We continue to look forward to the future in terms of these collaborations because it's only these platforms, it's only these conversations, but beyond that, the solutions that we continue to draw as we continue to engage are the ones that will deliver the local government that we reimagine. If you're not aware of the fact that SIGFARO will allocate a maximum of CPT points specifically for this webinar, and many others that we've had, so that we do contribute to this professionalization of local government, because this is part of continuous professional development. To claim your points, you can reach out to SIGFARO via CPD, which is an acronym for Continuous Professional Development. It's cpd@sigfaro.co.za. And if you have not registered, colleagues, for the public sector finance seminar scheduled for the 7th and the 8th of July at the Cape Sun Hotel, which is themed Driving Financial Sustainability Through Innovation and Reform, please hurry, do register. From what I've heard, since the publication or the announcement of the speakers, their quality, their experience within the public sector, I believe people don't want to miss that opportunity. And again, that will be a contribution to the continuous professional development by SIGFARO, because that seminar alone will earn you 10 CPD points. I've got in my panel, firstly, Mike Steyn, and I'll request my panelists, just as I finish reading your intro, you just turn on your camera, just greet the audience before we can actually start our session. Mike Steyn is a director and a principal consultant at triVector and is part of the National Treasury mSCOA team that has been working hard, ladies and gentlemen, to deliver the regulations that we so look forward to on mSCOA and integrated business processes. If you can turn on your camera, Mike, just to greet our audience.
Good morning, all. Good morning, Zolani, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Then, secondly, who has also contributed to the same project of ensuring that mSCOA evolves, it's not static, who has been also working with the team, is Dumisani Ncube, who is the Chief Solutions Architect at iFix Business Solutions. Dumi, please greet our audience.
Good morning, Zolani. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much.
And second, lastly, we've got Tinanaki. I framed her not only for this conversation as one of the engineers in thinking behind the mSCOA evolution. She is mSCOA advisor at National Treasury. Tina, please greet and welcome our audience.
Thank you, Zolani. Good morning, everyone.
We've got Philip, I've mentioned business engineering. Philip de Bruyn is the managing director of business engineering, and of course, other entities that are linked to business engineering. One of them is Phoenix ERP. As I've indicated, business engineering is our platinum sponsor for this webinar series. Philip, thanks, but for this time, please greet and welcome our audience.
Good morning. My name is Philip de Bruyn. It's an opportunity or a privilege to share in this opportunity. Thank you very much for joining us. We're looking forward to the content. Thank you, Zolani.
Wonderful. And as I transition to our first presentation, it's always great to appreciate all of you as the audience. As you know, our chat box is always open for your comments, for your insights, because we don't only take questions in this platform, noting the fact that it's attended by various sectors within local government, your national departments, provincial departments, municipalities, the private sector players within the space of public sector. We've got, for an example, councillors, your non-governmental organizations, academic institutions, and academia. So the audience is wide, and we do appreciate your forever support and attendance, but let's engage further. And On the comments section, let's ensure that we do not put the questions in that section, because I can guarantee you that our panelists, even myself, are likely to miss the questions that will be coming through the comments section. Therefore, it's advisable that all the questions must then be posted in the Q&A option, which also our panels do have access to. The shorter they are, be it the comments or the questions, the better chance that they have in terms of being answered by our panelists. Mike, my formalities on my side are over. Let me hand over to you so that you can take us through your presentation. That really sets the scene for our conversation today.
Thank you, Zolani. Just give me a minute to share my screen. I just want to confirm. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Mike.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Okay. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for the introduction, Zolani. It's a privilege to be with you today and to share some of the information and some of the activities we've been involved in with you. I think this topic that we're discussing today is something that's close to my heart. I understand the importance of the traditional financial aspects and the stuff, but also the fact that we're talking today a little bit differently, approaching mSCOA slightly differently from an integrated business and systems perspective is something that I think is important. I will be with you for the next few minutes. The idea is to give you an introduction into the recent mSCOA reform initiative that I was privileged to be part of, to explore the role that the business processes and system functionality play within the municipal context, to understand why that's important, and then in particular to highlight the need for standardization and integration, specifically one of the key topics for today, and how that supports municipal operations. And then lastly, to hopefully give you some insight in terms of how the work that was done during the regulations project, how that would contribute to addressing some of the challenges we believe are the municipalities are facing in today's world. So I thought it would be useful just to sort of start with a simple, sort of unpacking of, how things work and where the challenges are. So typically our citizens out there, our customers, are interacting with our municipality via their business processes. In other words, when a citizen requests a service from a municipality or interacts with the municipality, there's an entry point somewhere, and that generally triggers a business process of sorts. That would sort of be a set of activities that are initiated, things to be completed, an application that needs to be completed, a review of that application that needs to be forwarded to someone to attend to, etc. So the actual execution of the services themselves, whether it is something like attending to a pothole or providing a new service request, whatever, is typically also executed then through our business processes. So the business processes are to a large degree the operationalization of what we do in our municipality. These processes in today's world are quite significantly enabled through systems. There are very few processes in today's world that doesn't have some degree of system interaction. So we need the system functionality or system capabilities to be able to enable these processes to be efficient and so forth. And processes themselves tend to also trigger other processes. So you may find, for example, that an application on one side for a new service needs to trigger things like, for example, billing, for example. so that we can ensure that we bill for the service, and that in their finance or accounts payable processes, we're also receiving the payments for those processes. So processes typically don't occur in isolation, but they occur sort of integrated with each other or aligned to each other. And these other processes have different systems that are typically supporting them. So we may have some sort of service or customer service request management system on the one hand to manage the request. We've got something like a billing system, for example, to deal with billing. And then we've got our finance accounts receivable component to deal with processing of payment receipts. So these things are all sort of form part of the operational landscape. And then obviously there's integration that takes place between these systems in order to enable these end-to-end processes. But things don't always really work like we hoped for them to work, and things often tend to go wrong. One of the typical scenarios we have is the lack of standardization of processes. So we find that we're not necessarily consistent in the way we execute things. When customers engage us, we tend not to necessarily have a consistent manner of dealing with them, and that leads to uncertainty and often leads to frustrations and problems. It also leads to inefficiencies when the ways that we do things, we do the same thing in many different ways, it becomes difficult to ensure that is optimal and efficient. We also have a lot of processes that are inadequately supported from a systems point of view, a lot of manual processes still, and a lot of that is paper-based. And we all know the challenges around managing paper-based processes. Paper gets lost. It's difficult to find stuff, to search through content. We need to store, all these records and stuff like that. So the level of automation or the lack of automation is often causes frustrations, which end up being typical frustrations for customers. We can't answer queries immediately because we don't have online access to the information. So we need to revert to paper-based information, and that often takes a while to be able to get back to customers with answers, for example. Another problem we have is that we often have these silos. Our processes, although the thinking is that they should be aligned, but they often are not aligned, and things tend to happen in isolation. And customers end up getting sent typically from pillar to post in terms of being able to solve problems or get services. So that often is a serious problem, is that we lack the integration or alignment at a business process level in terms of how things happen. And then again, at a systems level, we often find we lack integration, which means that information isn't available and we're having to recapture information across our systems, which leads to inconsistent reporting. It means that decision-making is often made with not all the information available, which can impact the quality of decisions made. A typical example is I recently had an experience where, and I won't mention where I am and which municipality, but I had a situation where my water, there was a leak at the water meter. And my first experience was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had, because coincidentally, the municipality vehicle drove past as I was standing there at the meter, and happened to be the team that had a bunch of meters in the back of their vehicle, and they stopped and they asked me if there was a problem. I explained to them and actually replaced the meter right then and there. I was really happy. The problem came a little later when I tried to upload my meter reading at the end of the month, and I started to have problems trying to reconcile the information. That led to communications with the local customer support team, and they asked me to come in. Anyway, it took a long while, but eventually realized that although the guys that helped me with the meter reading were really efficient and it worked really well, the process wasn't followed on their side. which meant that they hadn't recorded the necessary job cards. The fact that there was a new meter installed wasn't recorded, and that information didn't pull through the billing system. And the meter readings couldn't be updated as a result. So it had all this knock-on effect, which I think is a typical example of where, process not being followed, standardized process not being followed, and typical integration as a result didn't take place, and so forth. So these are some of the challenges. And this is really what the latest reform that I was part of set out to sort of address, was to kind of see how we can help to solve these obstacles and promote better governance and reporting, and ultimately improve service delivery. So just a little bit about the journey. mSCOA has come a while. The original mSCOA initiative was launched in 2014 and went live in 2017. There was some initial piloting of the chart and the initial solutions, and publication of Circular 80, which was the first documentation of the system requirements. Then there was a period in which National Treasury and the municipalities focused on embedding and establishing the mSCOA environment and ensuring compliance. There was a lot of training took place, a lot of guidance, and some compliance assessments were introduced, and that took place. And then ultimately, towards the end of 2023, the project was launched that I was part of, where we looked at reviewing the Circular 80 business processes, and with the idea of refreshing and updating that to bring it in line with changes in legislation, and also to try and address some of the issues I've just mentioned. That project has come to an end earlier this year. National Treasury is in the process now of preparing for promulgation of those processes, and we have sort of suggested to municipalities that they should use the time now to start doing preparation and planning, and start preparing for the implementation of the new regulation. In terms of what it was that we set out to do, first of all, the idea was to review and update the minimum business processes and system specifications that were articulated in Circular 80, to address new requirements. We were also asked to update and develop standard operating procedures or the processes for mSCOA. We were created an updated ICT due diligence assessment, which was then be aligned with the new regulations. We were to consult with key stakeholders on the draft regulations, and to deliver some training on the new regulations to establish an understanding of what was coming in terms of these regulations. So the project took place over a period of just over 2 years. Initially, the focus was on the business processes. We had multiple consultations and work sessions across the different process areas, where we included representatives from the municipalities, from provincial and national treasury. We had vendors then participating in these sessions as well as other parties, such as SOLGA and the Office of the Auditor General. Had some discussions with the Receiver of Revenue on certain matters, so there was quite broad consultation. The second sort of phase that we went through then was really starting to focus on the system requirements. And again, there was extensive consultation. I can't remember offhand exactly how many work sessions and ICFs and stuff that took place, but there were well over 100 different sessions that took place over the 2-year period, with significant participation in these sessions. So one of the things we really focused on then was, the business processes, and I thought it would be useful just to do a little bit of a deep dive into this, So we started by, kind of creating a structure, and those of you that are familiar with Circular80 will know that Circular80 has addressed sort of two levels of processes where they sort of defined process groups and processes as part of that. As part of this project, we went in a bit more detail, and we identified a third level of process or sub-process, and this is typically where we're linking up the different processes in end-to-end flows. So at level 3, we started to show some of the end-to-end flows in terms of how the processes was chained to each other, and also the integration then between the different processes. And then also we did do level 4 process definitions, which was getting closer to the SOP level, where we described the detailed activities. But the decision was made from a regulation point of view is that we would only regulate up to level 3. So the level 4 processes that were defined as part of this project are there and have been made available and have served as input into the identification and definition of the system requirement side of things. But this is a level that we believe would typically need some adaptation and some implementation at a municipal level. So this is typically the level at which the municipality would be referencing their own systems, for example, or referencing their own organizational structures in terms of which roles. Because when we did this, we were referring to generic roles and generic system functionality at that level. So the information is there and the opportunity is there for the municipalities to use that level 4 to help with the implementation of the mSCOA initiative at that level. We covered essentially the same or similar scope as what was done in Circular80. Initially, Circular80 had 15 process groups. We've did some rearranging of that slightly, where we've combined a few things together, and we ended up with 14 level 1 business process groups. And we defined for these a level 2 and 3. I'm just going to run through a few of them from a time perspective. I don't have time to go into the detail, but in essence, things like, for example, as part of corporate governance, we looked at processes for both internal and external audit. We looked at processes that dealt some of the generic aspects of system requirements and management in terms of what one needs to do around that. There was processes dealing with legal framework things, changes in legal legislation, local government bylaws, etc. So that was covered there. We had processes around the municipal website, processes that dealt with oversight committees and council committees, and the reporting around that. We looked at performance management at an organizational level as part of that. Records management, reporting mechanisms was more around the information management and reporting, and then both risk and management and risk reporting there as well. Then under strategic and IDP planning, we dealt with strategic planning and the IDP and the consultation process, both the development and consultation process. Budgeting is something that got a lot of focus on, where we had the whole process of planning for the budget, and then various aspects, including revenue, HR, operational, CapEx, and maintenance and operational costs, inventory. So all of those aspects, and then looking at balance sheet and cash flow budgeting, secondary costing, funding reserves, and long-term financial planning. And then things like the reporting and the public participation, as well as approval and in-year monitoring and reporting. So sort of a complete end-to-end view for the whole budgeting financial planning process. Other process areas was project management, costing, contract management, also supply chain management, where we looked at the legal aspects, demand management and reporting, and procurement and reporting, and then importantly, supplier records management to look at how that would be managed. Other processes areas that we covered were asset management and maintenance, including then asset management planning and the acquisition, the maintenance, verifications and conditional assessments, operations, performance monitoring, disposals, and management reporting. Another key area was around real estate, so valuation role management, real estate, land use, development charges, building plans, way leaves, and property rates management. On the HR side, we covered the full HR space from human resource planning, employment practice processes, which included things from recruitment all the way through termination. So that was sort of the full life cycle. Then there was staff performance and development, which was more around the staff performance as opposed to organizational performance. In skills development, staff member relationships, leave and time management, payroll management, and reporting. Then another process area we focused on was revenue and debt management, obviously very critical and important for the municipality to ensure that the billing and the revenue management processes are working effectively, that we've got proper debt collection and credit control in place. Customer management was dealt with in here as well in terms of the customer life cycle, then also indigent management, and then some processes dealing with revenue from other sources, such as things like traffic fines, for example, was covered in there. Then on the financial accounting side, we had the general ledger, which is obviously a key part in the mSCOA environment, accounts receivable, accounts payable, our annual financial statements, as well as consolidation reporting. And then treasury and cash management, where we dealt with cash management, grant management, investment management, borrowings and financial leases, reserves management, provisions management, contingent liabilities, and as well as insurance and UIFW. And then lastly, inventory management, which dealt with consumables and materials, our water inventory, and our land inventory as well. So very briefly, that was the coverage of the business processes that we dealt with. And for each one of these, then we went down into level 3 to show what was the end-to-end process for each one of these. And then also a level below that, although, as I mentioned, it's only up to the level 3 that would be regulated. Then the next thing we did is go to look at the system requirements. So we needed to understand in terms of being able to ensure that these processes that have been defined, where there was a requirement for key automation, that we identified the automation requirements. It's important maybe to mention up front is that the aim was to do here was to identify also which of these requirements would be regulated, and we ended up classifying the requirements into 2 categories: those that were to be regulated and become part of sort of mandatory in terms of the regulations that would be promulgated, versus those that we deemed to be recommended sort of good practice requirements, which would then not be deemed to be mandatory, but rather optional in terms of adoption. We grouped our requirements into system functionality grouping. So that was just an organizing means to organize the different types of systems. And then we sort of identified a logical system functionality. We stayed away from prescribing. The intent of this project was not to prescribe any particular product. So we made no reference at any point to any particular system. This is not talking about a system A or system B, but rather talking about the type of system. So something like accounts receivable functionality, for example, or something like a general ledger, or a municipal website, for example. These were all the kind of system functionalities that we would define. And then we went for each one of those system functionalities. We went and analyzed the business processes, looked at what the appropriate automation would be, and we identified requirements for functionality that would be needed to support those processes. We identified three types of requirements. We identified functionality or functional requirements, which was the bulk of the requirements. We identified specific reporting requirements, so where there was a need for reports or dashboards or stuff like that to support decision-making and management of processes. We identified those. And the third one, which is probably important in today's perspective, is we also identified integration requirements. So where we felt there was a need for integration between the different systems, we identified that as well. So again, we covered 17 system functionality groups that were identified. I'm not going to go into the detail. There's some correlation between the processes and the systems, but these included, again, system functionalities that supported things. So things like, for example, if I just take, by example, cash management, the banking facilities needed to be able to do banking, cash book management facilities to be able to handle cash receipts and stuff like that. Cashier management as well for the cashier processes and stuff. So we identified these different system functionalities. They were close on 100, just short of 100 different system functionalities across these 17 groupings that we identified. And we identified detailed system requirements for it. So these system requirements now serve as the basis for the regulations and also the basis for the updated ICT due diligence, which is one of the deliverables that we produced. So I'm not going to go into the details. I think from a time point of view, we're a bit limited, so we can't unpack that in detail at this stage. But maybe just to highlight then some of the key outcomes then. So we defined these business processes which would serve as a basis for defining standardized processes. So trying to address the issue around standardized business processes and the problems that gives us if not addressed. The second thing then is the system functionality. And as mentioned, we define them as either regulated or recommended. This would deal with the problem of adequate automation of our processes, making sure that the critical automation that is believed is necessary to be able to deliver the services and to ensure proper governance and reporting, that's all in place. Then there were a set of draft regulations that have been prepared that are now going into a process for promulgation. We also produced a series of position papers. So these position papers were documents that were produced to serve as guidance on certain system-related issues, amongst other than issues impacting, for example, system integration and how to effectively or how to address proper integration between systems. And the other aspect another aspect that was addressed was the issue of data migration, typically when it comes to implementing new systems and the challenges around that. So some sort of guidance around that. We produced an updated ICT due diligence framework, which was now aligned to the new processes and system requirements. And we also went through a round of training where we then presented training to a large group of stakeholders on the new regulations, the processes, and the requirements that were addressed through them. So how did we contribute to solving the problems? First of all, as I mentioned, we started defining standardized processes that are required to assist municipalities to understand which processes need to be implemented if they haven't been implemented, to provide them with a baseline that can be used for defining standardized processes within their municipalities. We defined the system functionality that's required to support those business processes. This would allow serve as input for the vendors so that they would have some insight and understanding in terms of what would be required in terms of the regulations and for the solutions that they were developing and maintaining. It would also serve as a basis for the municipalities to understand what functionality they should be putting in place, and when it comes to acquiring solutions, what functionality they should be looking at, including then the integration requirements. We also, as part of the process, looked at key process integration. So we highlighted where different business processes need to be aligned with each other, where there was touch points between the different processes. So to help municipalities understand or break down potential silos that might be occurring. We, as I mentioned, we defined the integration needs between different systems, and the mSCOA chart of accounts itself also provides sort of a standardized data structures or formats specifically for financial data and reporting, which is then obviously important in terms of exchanging information between the different systems. So not only did mSCOA address standardization and integration that we're talking about, but it also then served to strengthen the governance, the compliance reporting, and hopefully support informed decision making. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I'm leaving you here with a link to a website where you can access the outputs produced by the project. So if you want more information, you're welcome to follow that link or to contact our colleagues at National Treasury and get more information in that regard. Thank you.
Always appreciated, Mike, and thanks for holding yourself when you reach out specifically for the contributions and just simplifying what is happening behind the scenes. As I transition to Dumi, there's an interesting question that came during the registrations, and I'm glad that Councillor Farnham joined us this morning. He's interested to know the common challenges of mSCOA. And again, that comes from that background of being the councillor, linking to, I'll say, oversight in terms of his role. But more so, it's more, say, the challenges that align to the fragmentation of the systems. That's something that I want you to ponder on, Mike, for later on, because we will be taking the next presentations and then we start to deal with the questions. But that question links with what I planned to pose to you, specifically the operational risks that arise when municipalities continue to rely, for an example, on manual interventions and disconnected systems. So if you can start thinking around those two, as when I come back to you, you can be able just to reflect on those. Having said that, Dumi, welcome, and let me allow you to make your contributions. Over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Zolani, and thank you very much, Mike, for the presentation. Hopefully, I am audible now so that you guys can hear me.
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay, all right. No, thank you very much, colleagues. Okay, so for me, I'm just going to add a few points in particular in relation to the why we feel mSCOA is a strategic enabler in ensuring that municipalities have got integrated systems and basically operations as a whole. So if you take it from the presentation that Mike has basically done, from the inception from 2014, mSCOA was always seen as if it's basically in finance. Then there's some confusion. Is it an ICT reform? Then by the time people got to realize that it's a holistic or whole-of-municipality business reform, then they started viewing it as maybe the end result for mSCOA is just reporting. Is it budgeting? Is it compliance? But with come to then realize that mSCOA is just more than that. It's basically a business transformation framework that enables municipalities to integrate the various aspects. If you look at it from a municipal accountability cycle, from the IDP, Integrated Development Plan, to the budgeting stage, service delivery, budget and implementation, to the in-year reporting and monitoring, the annual financial statements, the annual reporting, and eventually the oversight, which then goes back to inform the next IDP. So with that then being said, you then realize that it integrates across many departments, sections, and touches on multiple business processes that are within the municipality. Therefore, there was a need to have a connected operating model. So just like we understand that mSCOA creates a common language or creates a standardized chart for us to be able to do that, then that means that the core of mSCOA is then to ensure that the transactions are correctly classified and recorded, and then the reporting can be uniform across all the municipality. But then what does that mean from a system perspective? Then the system needs to be the one that enables or connects all these dots. And we do appreciate and understand that there are vast systems in place, and there are various business processes and procedures that need to be followed. Therefore, it then requires that with mSCOA, there is a need to then connect these. And the connection is through not choosing only one system that can cover all the aspects. If you look at the promulgated business processes and the system requirements, you then realize that it cannot be one system that can satisfy everything at this current moment. Therefore, the integration with those systems becomes crucial and key. By the integration, we mean that it is seamless and there is no direct human intervention, ensuring that there's transfer of data. So then the importance of mSCOA is to then connect the municipal value chain, from the planning to budgeting to procurement to finance, asset management, human resources, performance management, reporting, rather than just operating in silos, as Mike has indicated. So it creates an integrated business environment where information flows seamlessly across the municipality. Ultimately, municipalities need to then embrace mSCOA as the digital backbone of their operations and move beyond compliance, but to better position the municipality, improve governance, operational efficiency, and most importantly, service delivery to the public. Then one will then also ask yourself, but system integration, governance, and innovation, how can that be achieved? All those three aspects be achieved through mSCOA. And it is clear, as it was indicated in the earlier presentation by Mike, that we should move away, total change of a mindset from viewing mSCOA as a finance function alone, but see and understand its importance in the entire municipal business processes. As the example that was given by Mike in his presentation, where he had a water meter problem, then they managed to then come and install a new meter, but the normal processes and procedures were not followed. That then raised that particular problem. Then with that example, if you unpack it, you then realize the importance of one data source or single data entry that then flows to different sections, departments, and activates different business processes. So with that particular example that Mike gave, then does that mean that he should go through the customer portal and then log a fault for the water meter. Then when he logs a fault, automatically the system should activate and communicate with all relevant departments. Someone from technical services will go and assign a technician, if there's a need for an engineer, someone at customer care to know that, okay, go communicate with someone from billing to show that to most probably install a new meter, there'll be a new meter number, the new readings need to change, and then the process then follows from then on. And also to communicate back with the relevant customer to give them feedback about what is happening with their logged call, where the status is with that logged call. And if it's also going to affect other residents who are in that particular street, maybe they need to shut down water for that particular time, the communication is going there through the GIS mapping. They can identify all the relevant customers will be affected. So then integration becomes key. But what we're fighting for is the integration needs to be done on time, which is real time, one version of the truth, being through one data source, and it improves governance, transparency, accountability, and even providing our key decision makers, our councillors and executives, with the right information on time. And then our auditors will then have reliable information that they can then use to assist in the overall process of decision making and oversight for our political leaders. A major challenge facing municipalities is not the lack of systems, but the existence of discontinued systems or applications. There's duplicate data and manual reconciliations, which can also have an impact in terms of human error. And that then leads to delayed reporting, which then means that the efficiency is reduced, but most importantly, it then increases our audit risk. So system integration can address many challenges, as Mike has indicated, in the form that the data is captured once at one data source and stored in one central database, or is linked to data that can both be financial and non-financial data. This reduces manual intervention, improves data quality, enables real-time reporting, provides management with timely insights through dashboards and data visualization, which is one thing that we should also start moving towards if you look at the technology that is there. Then one can then ask, how does this integrated municipal operating model work as it is prescribed in the promulgated regulation that Mike has indicated earlier? It will then ensure that a single transaction should trigger related activities across the entire value chain and municipal accountability cycle, such that at the end of the day, there's multiple versions of the same data reported to different key stakeholders to satisfy their need. So the future for municipal environment is not one system doing everything, but an ecosystem of interconnected financial and, most importantly, non-financial systems that include planning and budgeting, revenue, GIS, smart metering, fleet management, human resources, customer management, to mention but a few, but they're all detailed, as Mike has indicated, in the promulgated regulation, and those that attended the training will get an appreciation that each business process requires extensive time. What I would also advise from my experience is such programs of reform need us to ensure that we engage the relevant key stakeholders or people who've got the experience in that particular process, but most importantly also to ensure that we give it the time that it deserved and not have a rushed implementation approach. And prior to implementing, come and call the other sections, departments, and other people doing the other business processes to sit in a round table and then realize and optimize and prioritize the implementation thereof. Then one would ask, how do you achieve this from a system perspective? Without trying to get too technical, I'll just highlight about 4 main points. Establish a single source of truth for the master data, a single source of the data. Number 2, adopt API based integration for seamless communication between systems. And number 3, ensure all systems use the mSCOA classification consistently and are on the correct version. Number 4, enable real-time data exchange across municipal functions. But this seems simple and straightforward in terms of having it documented and speaking about it in theory. But what does it really mean to us in terms of us being able to achieve this? It means that the innovation is there, the technology is there, but it needs change management that needs to play a key role. And for that, it means that we need to start being the change agents to understand that the data is available, but it can be swiftly translated to useful information through the integration of municipal systems and the business processes or the operating procedures. And also it means that it creates a strong foundation for innovation. It enables municipalities to leverage artificial intelligence for revenue forecasting, budget planning, expenditure, and anomaly detection or early detections or warning, risk management, while supporting smart city initiatives such as the Internet of Things, smart metering, GIS-enabled planning, and real-time service monitoring, which allows municipalities to move from being reactive, which is where we've been as a country for quite some time, to be predictive and data-driven decision-making, where we let the numbers do the talking, and then we can then be able to confirm it across the different key stakeholders. However, technology alone cannot deliver transformation. The success of mSCOA in terms of the reforming entirety depends on effective change management. Municipal leaders must champion the integration, foster collaboration across departments, and invest in continuous training and skills transfer and then establish the strong governance structures, which I believe we do have. Then in conclusion, or my takeaway points are basically to ensure that we understand that systems integration is a must if we're able to achieve the objective that has been set by mSCOA. So ultimately, municipalities should shift the conversation from are we mSCOA compliant to how are we using mSCOA to build an integrated, intelligent and service-driven and focused delivery to the community. And as we look into the future, it is clear that innovation depends on integration and reliable data. When municipalities fully embrace mSCOA, they create a foundation for business intelligence, predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, and smart city initiatives. And I would like to also include that where we are with mSCOA is quite an interesting phase, but it's also a very critical phase because everything that we are going to implement and are going to integrate and use, we should be looking at it as a long-term solution, not a temporary solution or fix. In other words, let's just not chase compliance, but let's chase qualitative compliance by ensuring that our systems are fully and seamlessly integrated and that there is one data source and one version of the truth so that we are able to achieve the compliance that we are chasing for and to be able to improve service delivery, not only in terms of one municipality, one province, but as a country, and hopefully other countries can learn from us. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dumi. And your contribution begins to answer a question that came during the registrations. I'll just check that shortly for you. But as you settle in, and I'll be welcoming Tina soon, I do have a question of my own that from your experience, having been in the space, what are the biggest barriers that are preventing municipalities from achieving what I call is a true system of integration? And like as I've indicated to Mike, I will be giving you an opportunity to come in at some point. Here is that question, which I believe you've touched on. In as much as it's more compliance related, and the question itself, it came from, let me see, Ruben Matoma in Louis Trichat. Does mSCOA has teeth to, or is it just for compliance purposes? And you've touched on that, and it's one of the questions that I would like you, as we start the engagement, also as you attend to the question I posed, you then start to reflect on. At this point, let me welcome Tina, as I've indicated, who's also part of the National Treasury team, specifically the mSCOA advisor on mSCOA. Tina, thanks for always also making time, availing yourself, and more so this time at a very short notice. I often say soldiers have their boots on all the time, so that when that call comes, it's not a question of I can find one but not the other. They are ready for action. For your information, the 105 of us who are in this webinar at this point, Tina will also be featuring in the seminar that I referred to earlier in terms of SIGFARO, public sector finance seminar. that's taking place in Cape Town in the next week. Tina, welcome and over to you.
Thank you so much, Zolani. It's always refreshing to be part of this conversations with the colleagues and to talk about what I'm passionate about. As colleagues have mentioned, that we are in the process of regulating business processes and system requirements. And Mike mentioned something that's very important about paper-based environment and working manually. Imagine your organization where perhaps it has been affected by fire and you don't have any documents to produce. Now the auditors come and you need to go back to try and reproduce because you do not have information at hand. You do not have anything that is on the system. Part of what you've been working on, you've been working manually and partly through the system. And I look at it and say, you know, with the regulation of these business processes and system requirements coming from where we started in 2014 when mSCOA was promulgated, and as part of the very first circulars, I think from circular 1 to 6, you know, it was mentioned that and stressed that municipalities should have proper governance structures that will drive this entire process. And for any project, basically, that you are about to undertake, you need to make sure that there's proper governance for that project. And Dumisani mentioned something that when we started, it was mainly, you know, this is a finance reform, the CFO is going to be responsible for this. And any other person that is part of finance and people were taking a backseat. But what is important is that at this point, I see people looking at it because we are introducing now regulating the system requirements. They are looking at it as a specific ICT project. And fortunately or unfortunately, digitization is not an option anymore. You can see that it is a backbone of proper governance and it is a backbone of what mSCOA from the beginning should have been. Now, what is important about municipalities strengthening their governance structures? I know that when we started and we were looking at moving towards compliance in 2017, there were governance structures and we could see that it worked. Municipalities were able to comply. However, the reform keeps evolving by each day. And that did not mean that those governance structures had to die down. You know, I could see that for some, they just died a natural death. And there are those that kept continuing. And this is a process that has been tried and tested. You can see with the ones that continued, that when you have got a proper governance, it provides structure to your project. It provides structure to the entire municipality. It provides oversight on what you are supposed to do. And when your assurance providers do come to the party at the end, they come to a solid foundation. And I look at this, I normally say when I speak that mSCOA is mainly made of, I look at it as a three-legged pot. It is mainly made of people, processes, and systems. There was a beautiful slide that Mike showed where you could see there's a face and he showed business processes and systems. And if you are not investing on your people, Dumisani spoke about a training. If you're not investing on your people to make sure that the implementation is going to be a success, you know, as much as there is technology, but implementation depends on the people to drive it. So as I want to talk about what do you need to do to prepare for the promulgation. You could see that from 2014, there has been quite a lot of strides that the National Treasury has made to come to this point. And we are at a point where we are waiting now for promulgation. And from our side as National Treasury, As Dumisani mentioned, there has been a training in March where we were preparing everyone to make sure that we are all on the same wavelength as it pertains to understanding what the business processes and system requirements are and what the expectation is from the side of the municipality. So users need to understand their role. So as the municipality, you need to make sure that you invest in capacitating the users, make sure that they understand and give more support. Sit down and identify your training needs to say, we can see that from what we have been doing, this is where we need to move to at this point, where I am right now and where I need to move to. Make sure that you provide role-based training for each and every department. Dumisani mentioned that it is not only, it does not only depend on one department, but all the business processes of the municipalities need to take part in ensuring that they understand what needs to be done, they understand their roles, train users on understanding the source data, because it starts from there. Before we get to credible reporting, mSCOA starts from the source of the information that one captures on the system. You need to make sure that you've classified it correctly. Do you understand the validation rules as it pertains to the mSCOA segments? Now that we are moving, we are saying we are looking at business processes. We are not throwing away the fundamentals of mSCOA, where you need to understand the combination of the segments. So you need to understand the validation rules behind what you are doing, what you are capturing as an individual. If I am an SCM officer, for example, I still need to understand what is expected of me and what is it that I need to do on the system. And what is important also, I mentioned that it all started. I just want you to see that this is not something new. This is a build up from what happened back in 2016 on MFMA circular number 80. You were also, according to mSCOA circulars, one of the first 6, I cannot remember on top of my head which one it is, identify super users for the system, people that are going to support are going to be system supporters, system administrators. That is very important. Also, change management, we cannot stress this enough. It's important that you plan for this change. There's a certain way that you have been doing things. You need to plan for the change and make sure that from the start of this project, you understand what needs to be done. You communicate to the users of the system. You communicate to different business processes so that they understand what needs to be done. I've spoken to identifying the skills gap, so that should you need to take people for training, you already know, you assess what is it that they need and what kind of support would you have to give them. And it's important that this whole thing is driven by the leadership of the municipality, so that it can be it can cascade to the governance structures. It gets to be discussed. So from what you have discussed, you will have your roadmap now, which will identify the gaps that you have, which will identify also make sure that from there you have got responsibilities that you have allocated clearly to everyone who needs to do what, as we are preparing for this new I don't even want to say new regulations, because it's a build up from circular 80, but for this new project, I must say, and make sure that oversight is strengthened. I like the question of the one of the councillors. They are, for them to be able to make decisions, they need to be properly informed. They need to be kept abreast of what is happening on mSCOA. So having these structures, it actually ensures that they are kept on the loop. You discuss these things you discuss these issues in your committees. Then those committees will escalate them to the councillors to make sure that they understand it and know what needs to be done. There is a situation where I was once in one of the municipalities where the councillors were saying, we are only hearing this for the first time. And I thought it's important. We only heard about mSCOA when we had to approve a budget, and we wanted to understand, what is this all about? What do they mean? So if only we, as municipalities, involve councillors when they need to approve budget, then we are heading for a disaster. You need to make sure that you are carrying them through and they are part of this process, so that it makes it easier for them when they are making decisions to know exactly what is it that they are deciding on and what is it that they are taking. Let me pause right there, Zolani. Thank you very much.
What a wonderful, insightful input. And again, ladies and gentlemen, she will be in the SIGFARO's Public Sector Finance Seminar that's taking place in Cape Town. Having said that, and again, looking at our next speaker, there is a question that is in the chat that I believe you will be able to attend to when that time comes from Anusha. I won't even read it out. You can just check it out and prepare, I'll say, some response to that. But also thanks, Mike, for responding to Peter in terms of the question and the comments that he has raised. And perhaps, Tina, when you come in again, you can also reflect on that, because to me, Peter's comments and questions are perhaps a disconnect between the provincial role players who ought to be or have been working with National Treasury in ensuring that all the stakeholders, the role players within the province are indeed involved in the process. But Mike has responded. Maybe if you've got insights, you can add. Before we get to Philip, we've got a poll that I would request that all of you participate in so that we can be able to assist our sponsor in terms of the first question is more about what is your municipality's biggest challenge with mSCOA compliance. And again, referring to municipality, I've indicated that we've got various role players within this webinar. It could then be the fact that you have worked in a municipality, you are rendering services, and not necessarily as municipal officials. We've got 4 options there. Maintaining transactional compliance, which seems to be the highest at the moment. Budget alignment and reporting, and you might have heard Dumi talking about that alignment. Data quality and master data, which at the moment, I start seeing the scores coming in, but it's slow because data itself is the new gold, but beyond that, data is very important. We will be going to the next question, but on this one, I'll request that we do participate, because only 18 at this point out of 96 have participated. But we see staff and skills training at 40% being the highest, as Tina has indicated. It becomes one of those critical points. Let's stop this one here because we've got quite a few that are coming. Then I'm not sure, I might have pressed the wrong button here.
Zolani, it's 5 questions in the one poll, so users have been answering all 5 questions, so we can just give them some time.
Okay.
You can just scroll down. You should be able to see the other questions as well.
The other questions. Oh, okay. Yeah. Then let me go to the next one. Which system integration challenge has the greatest impact on your operations? And again, I do see there that at this point in time, we've got 38% being the lack of real-time data which is what the panelists have touched on. And question number 3 is, how confident are you that your current financial system supports full mSCOA compliance? And on this one, we've got confident, we've got 30% and not confident at all. And it then shows that there's still a lot that needs to be done, specifically on that aspect. And then on number 4, which area will deliver the greatest value if it were fully integrated? And again, here we see that electronic document management, revenue and billing are key on those one. And lastly, what should be your municipality's top digital transformation priority over the next 12 months? And maybe, if possible, then we will quickly run this poll again, because as I said, I might have pressed something wrong here, because looking at the numbers, they are not really adding up. And colleagues, sorry for that. Let's just start again, because the answers to these questions will then help Philip in his contribution. Starting with the first question. Let's do answer as we see them popping up. After every 30 seconds or so, I'll just give you the score and then go to the next one. This one is, what is your municipality's biggest challenge in mSCOA compliance? The second one, which system integration challenge has the greatest impact on your operations? Please do engage and answer the questions, to which, again, I'll just share the results as we get closer to the conclusion of the minutes allowed for the poll itself. Question number 3, and I see already we've got many of you already in that question, which is, how confident are you that your current financial system supports full mSCOA compliance? And question number 4, which area would deliver the greatest value if it were fully integrated with your ERP system? I do see there that some answers are coming through. And also question number 5, what should be your municipality's top digital transformation priority over the next 12 months? And again, we talk about the evolution and the revolution of mSCOA, which then necessitates those plans to say, how do we then respond in terms of our planning in ensuring that the next phase doesn't catch us at the back foot. There is a requirement for that planning. As we get closer to the end of the poll itself, for question number 1, we do have, and again, even with the start, staff skills and training still comes up on top, tied with budget alignment and reporting, which then says there is a need for a key focus there. The poll itself is still open. If you still want to vote, I'll be ending it soon. Question number 2, we see there again 29% in terms of system integration. In the main, the financial system and GIS integration, tied with lack of real-time data exchange, are important. At this point, I'll be ending the poll and sharing the results, but we do appreciate the time that you've taken to actually complete the poll itself. And at that point, let's take Philip. At least we've got an idea of the outcomes. And again, it will assist you as you gather the information, making your inputs for this particular session. Welcome, Philip. Let's get your input.
Thank you so much, Zolani. I've asked Dan to just mail me the results. I'll discuss it at the end of the contribution. But again, this morning, I'm very excited about the turnout. This is a very pertinent matter that we've been working on for the past 10 years since 2016. I sort of share the sentiments that Tina raised with regards to you really arrive at municipalities and then people seem to be surprised. But during the last few years, especially the last 18 months, I think Mike and his team have done a great job in facilitating the ICF session so that everybody sort of was able to get to the same sort of environment and on the same hymn sheet. But one of the critical things I think that we've realized is that mSCOA wasn't just a financial compliance requirement. It really brought about the business transformation program involving all departments, all sectors in the municipality. And the true value of mSCOA is realized really when it becomes a common language that connects every municipal business process. So from the engineers to the community services areas to any of the areas, finance, corporate services, everybody needs to participate in the process or understand the language model that guides us through the mSCOA processes, because it touches really every municipal business process in the environment. Dumisani explained the significance of the integrated operating model in much detail, and that drives the whole process around good governance. We're faced with duplication of information, manual reconciliations. That intent leads to delayed reporting. The data quality is of concern. And something that we've realized and that we work with in our installed base or with our clients on a daily basis is to ensure that the digital maturity of the information in the core business systems. Core business system can't operate independently, because if it keeps on doing that, then you'll never achieve the required digital maturity within the organization. And that's really what we have. So we've had all these silos of systems within the organization. But as we've moved through the last few years, we've realized that to get to that single version of the truth, it's really important that we consolidate as much of the processes in a single environment. That leads to, allows us to implement certain levels of automation, and those are supposed to improve our processes, the speed of execution, and not simply just digitize inefficiencies. So while we work through the process of digitalization, which is critical, I think Tina spent a lot of time on that, very, very important points that she raised. But digitalization is very important. But through the process of digitalization, let's work at improving the business processes under execution. Now, we have the legislation, we've got the mSCOA, I don't want to sort of generalize, but we've got the ICF frameworks, we've got everything there. But the implementation will always be unique to specific environments, because there are certain very unique drivers that drive digitalization because of a host of reasons, community services delivery programs, etc. So, but what we need to be attentive to is that while we work through these processes of eliminating repetitive manual tasks and looking at workflow approvals and automated workflow approvals, that we work with a common goal to actually optimize the execution. So the worst thing that you could do is to take what you have manually, create a digital environment, and then you're worse off than you were before you start. Now, if we look at the issues with regards to automation or the benefits, it definitely leads to better governance. And we achieve that because we're not just simply making paperwork faster. We are actually automating a business process that allows our reaction speed to be near immediate. If you approve a building plan, a leave application, any component within the organization that you execute, if you press submit, it is approved. We've got legislative frameworks that says you've got 30 days to this and 25 days to do that. That's all fine. But with the implementation of what we are discussing today, we'll get into a situation where if you press submit, all stakeholders are notified that your application has been approved. You can have your function in the park on Saturday afternoon. You can build the wall that you wanted to, and that's near immediate. But because of the automation, all the records are up to date. This financial system is up to date. The necessary invoicing is done. The process flows basically because of the benefits of the automation, aiding better governance, and then making ease of doing business with the organization a lot better, much better. Okay. Integration, what we found, it extends beyond the financial system because you've got disparate environments, disparate systems, asset management system, a GIS system, a HR and payroll system. You've got the supply chain management environment, document management, customer relationship management. There's various citizen engagement platforms. All these silos need to be broken down. And as Dumisani said this morning, a common API, common interface into your financial environment, into your core financial system, so that we can integrate the reporting. I mean, every operational decision eventually has a financial impact. And that's why integration is not necessarily, well, it's no longer optional. It's really becoming a way of doing business. This is the way that we execute the mSCOA framework, and this is the way that we realize the benefits that that we want to see through a standardized chart at all municipalities. And I know it's different. It's very difficult to generalize because metros are a lot different than what we used to term B4 type of municipalities. They have the same compliance requirements, but the deployment, implementation, and the impact in a metro is just going to be a bit higher, significantly higher than at a smaller municipality. There's a comment this morning that I saw in the chat from one of the provincial departments, and they must also not underestimate their significance, because it's important that from a provincial perspective, nationally, we have that enabling mechanism that will allow municipalities to enhance the benefits of the journey that we're on. Now, data is becoming an issue. This last few years, we've seen many data cleansing projects, data cleanups, data this, data that. Who owns it? Why is it not standardized? How should it be standardized? And most of those questions are being answered if you just look at the mSCOA framework. What Mike and his team have done is they've created really great data sets or examples of this is the way that we should move forward. Because data quality is becoming a lot more important than the quantity of data. We have a lot of data, but if that quality is not usable, it doesn't stand to benefit the organization. I mean, poor data leads to poor decisions. Now, good governance begins with trusted data. So the importance of ensuring that our data integrity framework is in place and that the data that we capture is stored in a compliant, usable manner is critical. Maybe just sort of before I close, if we look at the implementation, when we started with mSCOA, many organizations treated this as a IT project, IT transformation initiative. But where we've seen successful implementations, it's where it was treated as a digital transformation and a strategic business initiative by the municipality. Now, we've all had mSCOA forum meetings, and we still perhaps have those. Some of us having those meetings because we have to, but in certain environments, we're really using that as a digital transformation framework, creating that framework, and then ensuring that the whole initiative is treated as a strategic business initiative. And it's important to understand that technology supports the transformation, but good leadership enables it, and that is critical. Now, the collaboration as I touched on it in a specific collaboration across sectors. I touched on it earlier, but that sort of really involves the National Treasury, system vendors, the provincial treasuries, auditors, industry experts, involves all of us, because if everybody works together in a team, we will accelerate the innovation and definitely reduce the duplication of effort. The future of local government lies in shared knowledge and common standards and collaborative innovation. We are all in this together. And I also think we mustn't underestimate the significant changes that we've experienced in local government finance since 2016, maybe after COVID 2020. Every year, every quarter, reporting and compliance frameworks are imposed and enforced. Our strings are submitted automatically. If the string is not green, it's a critical situation. It impacts our forecasting. It never used to be this alive, this sort of immediate. Now, within a few hours, if the strings don't balance, then you get a call because you might have an unfunded budget or somewhere in the TB something's wrong. It's near immediate reporting, but it's not local, it's national. It's available on the national dashboard and it can be seen. So manipulation of information is really becoming near impossible. Our general feeling is that as municipalities continue their digital transformation journey, we shouldn't simply measure compliance with mSCOA. We should really look at how effectively compliance enables integrated business processes. Better integrated business processes leads to better governance, leads to better decision-making, and ultimately improved service delivery. So, Zolani, in conclusion, I think one of the real opportunities lies in moving beyond the compliance framework and towards becoming a fully data-driven municipal environment within the South African context. Thank you.
As always, that was mouthful. As we get to the questions which I posed to my panelists, and also touching, I'll say, on something that you've all touched on, but also it came through your contribution now, Philip. It's more a comment than a question, and also a comment from my observation, a seasoned South African who operate from Graaf-Reinet, Johan Malherbe. It's more about the silo approach, which is also very evident in the SPLUMA implementation. That will be your Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act, which is problematic for many. Also that problem, and I believe he is within that space, because his observation is that it's not only inside municipalities as the entities, but it's more also between the functional provincial and national departments. He then ends his comment by saying we need consistency to change South Africa into a development construction site, and that's mouthful. Let's go back to the questions. I'll allow Mike to come in. One of the questions, in fact, I'll put them both because of time. We won't be able to take them one by one, Mike, and you can prepare to me in terms of yours. After Mike, I'll allow you to come in immediately. Mike, what operational risks arise when municipalities continue to rely on manual interventions and disconnected systems? And the second one was more on the interest to know the common challenges. As I've said, these questions were related, and this one is the one that came from Councillor. But it was more on the common challenges of mSCOA, specifically on fragmentation of systems and other related matters. Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Zolani. And I'm going to touch on, I think, a point that Philip also sort of was highlighting around the integration. If we talk to the first question around operational risks, the integration mindset I think that we've had in the past, particularly when mSCOA was considered primarily just a reporting reform, was that we kind of relied on kind of batch integration. Things were done at month end, and it was done with the mindset that we integrate information to provide consolidated, integrated reporting. The opportunity lies now on getting it using more at an operational level, and for that we need real-time integration. We need information to flow when it happens, so that people can make operational decisions. And I think therein lies a risk that we're trying to address. I think in the current context where we lack real-time integration, particularly in the operational platforms and processes, we run the risk of making poor decisions. We're not aware of things like stock levels that have not there. So we send off a maintenance crew to go do work, and we haven't got the stock in place, for example. I'm just using that. The more we can move to real-time integration, the more informed we can make, the better decisions we can make in terms of our operational activities, in terms of planning our maintenance activities, planning new installations, doing that type of stuff. And I know, and it's been quite a debated issue throughout the project, was moving from batch into this real-time mode is going to put pressure on the solutions and the vendors and the municipalities to get to that level of integration. I think Dumisani also mentioned about the API type integration, and I think that talks to it as well. But that, I think, is a key thing. So yeah, I think that's from an operational risk, I think, a key issue. In terms of the question around common challenges, the data is definitely becoming an issue, and I'm going to use an example to highlight that. One of the challenges that a lot of municipalities have experienced, I think, relates to just the chart of accounts, the implementation of the chart of accounts across the different systems. So where organizations are using different systems, the chart of account obviously needs to be updated and reflected and consistent, so that we have consistent reporting, and when we exchange data between systems, we're talking essentially the same language. So that's been problematic, and it relates to it's an integration issue on the one hand, and also to some degree a design issue in terms of how best to design that so that this chart of account stays up to date. And things that we've experienced in the past is that when National Treasury has released updates to these charts of accounts, in some cases those updates haven't trickled through to all the systems. You'll find maybe in the general ledger it's been updated, but in some of the transactional systems that are feeding the general ledger or in some cases, a year or two behind in terms of the update. So you have this inconsistency, and that's created a lot of challenges. So we actually put one of the position papers, I didn't mention it in the presentation, but one of the position papers specifically talks to the issue of how to manage the synchronization and the updating of the mSCOA chart of accounts. But I use that just as an example, but I think that is a typical challenge that we believe needs to be addressed, and we're hoping through what we've done that we can improve on that.
In terms of the questions that came through, specifically for yourself, that I would like you to touch on, are more around, firstly, from your experience, the biggest barriers that, for an example, prevent municipalities from achieving the true value of the system integration, and whether does mSCOA have teeth to bite? That was from the registrants, or is it just for compliance purposes? You can come in and just share your insights on those two questions. That would then be your turn, Tina. There was a question from Anusha, and I've just dropped you an inbox on the second area that will turn on when your chance comes. Let's allow Dumi to come in. Then immediately after Dumi, you will take the mic.
Right. Thank you very much, Zolani. Thank you very much for those questions. I'll start with the first one from my experience. And I think, luckily, Mike and Philip have also touched on them. Basically, it's the quality of the data. It's the biggest one. And also, if you look at it as well from the perspective of the systems, it's the compatibility of the various systems that they're using. So some are old, outdated legacy systems that might not be having the right technology to support, for example, API integration. Then the biggest one also is the working in silos. You have a department or a section within the municipality that is working on integration that they know clearly touches on another section and department. So I think municipalities should looking at in terms of looking at the data itself and the integration, they should always do it in consultation with all key stakeholders and not look at it from the perspective, it's for my department, it's my section. The data belongs to the municipality and it's public data. So we need to then be able to have an open mind. Then also lack of planning and budgeting for it, because sometimes it could be quite an extensive process. And then lack of knowledge sharing and experience from those that are involved in the process. So some people understand integration as interfacing, and also some people don't understand the magnitude. Sometimes it's also too much information. I think sometimes they over complicate it. You just need to identify the key fields that you need and the common fields that feed or support the mSCOA chart or the integration thereof that needs to be done by the relevant people or the municipality itself. Then obviously the training and skills transfer, which I think if I can maybe shed a bit more light on that one, it's not a matter of someone ticking a box that I attended training and submitting an attendance register and maybe claiming SNT if there's an SNT. It's about there being continuous monitoring and ensuring that they did actually acquire that skill and they're using it, therefore leading to the reduction in the support if you have consultants that are doing that by the person doing that. And then also ensuring that there's no reliance on that one person within the team, that there are multiple people who possess that skill to then be able to assist in that process. So those for me have been the main challenges that we've faced. And also sometimes it's also not looking at best practices. You might have another municipality that uses the same system or systems. Their integration works perfectly well. So you can reach out to your colleagues or to your fellow municipal officials and learn from them, and then also maybe looking at it holistically from even the service providers themselves, providing a standard solution across all municipalities. I know they might vary from a metro, as has been indicated, to a local municipality, but if it's the same municipality, the way that integration works could then be standard. Then the last question was, does mSCOA teeth bite, or it's just a compliance purpose? I think for me, if you're still contemplating that does it bite, then you might find yourself wanting in the near future, because if you look at it overall, where it's going to a point whereby, for me, subject to being corrected, is there will come a time where there'll be no request for you to submit any report, but you get the feedback of that report, because data will be accessible at any one point in time. And if your data is not up to date, it's not realistic, it's not using the latest chart, then you'll then definitely be found wanting. And I'm sure there are some municipalities that have also had their equitable share withheld for them not meeting the requirements. So the teeth might not seem to be biting, but they're being sharpened. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I'm going to start with the question where one was asking, what is the compliance rate amongst metros, and what is the biggest hurdles that inhibit compliance? That is not a straight answer because compliance is at different levels. If you look at how municipalities implemented the reform, you'd find that there's a certain level where they have complied. Or better yet, let me put it like this, everyone complied in 2017. But remember, I mentioned that the reform is changing every day, you know. So I cannot put a number or to say there's a specific percentage, but all I can say is that yes, municipalities are complying, but the levels of compliance are not the same. They are at different levels. Then moving to the second one that you sent to me, Zolani, where one asked how to perform oversight. As the municipality is to have different oversight structures that need to work together. I've been listening to my colleagues also speaking about, trying to break silos. So mSCOA came to assist in trying to break silos. So the same as, building your oversight, you need to have different governance structures. For example, the first one, your project steering committee. So for you to be able to implement the reform correctly, you must have a project steering committee where you are going to sit and discuss the progress on the implementation and identify if you do have any challenges that you have. From there, you also have the council. Council is part of your oversight structure where you are supposed to go and report the challenges to the council, as they are the ones that are charged with governance of the municipality. And they need to make decisions based on the challenges that you have and perhaps bring solutions as to how you can overcome those challenges. You also have internal audit that is supposed to review the entire process and look at the compliance level. Are you complying with the implementation of this reform? You've got audit committee that is supposed to provide assurance. And you also have your relevant provincial treasuries and national treasury that provides overall oversight in terms of the implementation, and they assist you in ensuring that you are complying. Should you need capacity in certain areas of compliance that you are not, they do offer capacity building, that is training. We have monthly master classes that we have where we are training municipalities, and we bring in the same room municipalities and the system vendors, so that if perhaps something relates to the system vendor needs to assist the municipality on, then they are in the same room and they are on the same level of understanding as in who is supposed to be doing what in terms of how do you budget on the system, how do you transact, and how do you report. So basically, that's in a nutshell how you can build your oversight in a municipality. Thank you, Zolani.
That's so mouthful, and let me extend our gratitude and thanks to our panelists. And judging by the comments that have come through, the questions and their quality, it also shows that for us to be able not only to drive the implementation, but also to influence it, these engagements are quite important. I will be requesting my panelists just to reflect for their closing remarks, but it's important to appreciate we were at 107, but even at this time, we still have 100 of us concentrating on this topic and discussion. And perhaps in your closing, each of you, just maybe to touch on the issue of change management, because it's coming through strongly, and not only with implementation of mSCOA as a reform, we are currently busy with the review of the white paper on local government, and in the webinar that I continue to attend, specifically on that, we've got a series, the issue of people, because we can have the systems, we can have the processes, but that people element also become important. Now, within the municipality, as the institution, I'll share my view with you, whether you agree with, and we start maybe bringing the side of corporate services to the fore, because if you look at change management, that must deal with the people element. It can be an expectation of the CFO to also champion that particular process. What then becomes the role of your human resources management in supporting the reform? I think it's one of the things that we need to drive and drive hardly as we look at the regulations that will then focus on integration as well as business processes. I'll just need your reflections as you close. But just to take one question, and also thanks to our audience and panelists, in the live session itself, all the questions have been answered, unlike the previous webinar. But there's the last one that comes from Mozambique during the registrations from Jose, who is a researcher in terms of what is the role of SALGA on scaling up mSCOA at a provincial levels. And again, Jose, it could be the misunderstanding of our government system, because mSCOA is specifically for the local government sphere. That will be your municipalities. But also the reform itself comes from SCOA, which stands for the same, the Standard Chart of Accounts, because from inception, the national government and departments and entities, so as the provincial governments across 9 in South Africa and their entities, they've been using SCOA, a single system, in terms of their operations. So that's how the dynamics are in South Africa. And then on that case, I would say SALGA will not necessarily have a role in scaling up mSCOA, because it's a reform that is confined within sphere within South Africa. And once more, thanks for all of you in the audience, firstly, and also ensuring that, as Mike has done, to the comment and questions that came from Peter, to say we are not only a medium just to have conversations. We do empower, as it has come through the comments, but more so, we do ensure that this is a platform where collaborators meet, as it has been demonstrated by the conversation in the chat between Mike and Peter, which I believe it will get to a point where Mike has indicated in terms of taking it up, and also Peter getting that level of satisfaction and also coming closer to the process. Let me take you, Mike, briefly in terms of your closing remarks and insights, and then it will be Dumisani.
Thanks, Zolani. First of all, thanks very much for the opportunity to join here. And I think the couple of things in terms of change management, it's going to be so critical, and it's a big issue. It's difficult to sort of really address it quickly in a closing remarks. But one of the things that we would encourage is that, when the municipalities set up the structures around this initiative, typically the steering committees and so forth around mSCOA, it's important to understand that that's a multidisciplinary type steering committee. It cannot just be IT and finance that are sitting in those structures implementing these projects. It needs to be, representative of all the different stakeholders, and particularly the change management. If that's sitting in HR, then they need to be there. But even the business that's being impacted, the operational departments and stuff, need to be aware and need to be part of the journey. If we don't take them on the journey from day one, then I think we're going to fail in the change management effort. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very much, Zolani, and to the colleagues as well as all the attendees. It's been a pleasure. I think for me, the takeaway will basically be echoing similar to what Mike has spoken to in terms of the change management. But maybe the key aspects is for them to be able to give the system integration or this phase of the mSCOA project, give it as much time and respect as it deserves, and go to it, start from the drawing board from zero, assess your current state, develop a change management plan and other related plans like an implementation plan, communication plan, and so on. Involve all key stakeholders like Mike has indicated, so that it's a holistic approach, provide training and support, then ensure that there's continuous improvement and ongoing, and most importantly, engage key stakeholders like your National Treasury, provincial treasuries, and consult fellow municipalities or colleagues that have gone through the process, how they've gone about it, best practices, we pick them up from there. And also from the lessons learned, we can also learn how not to make mistakes as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Zolani. My colleagues have covered it quite nicely. If you are not taking your different business processes on the journey, they will not see the importance. It will just be a matter of reporting to them. But if they understand that this reform also affects their business processes, then they will also go along with you. I think what Mike mentioned, that every business process, even on the regulations of mSCOA, one of the circulars, it tells you that it needs to be a representative of all business processes, so that you are all singing from the same hymn book. With that, you will see the change in, credible reporting. You will see the decisions that are made from reliable data and improvement in service delivery. And that can only happen if you have got disciplined governance that is comprised of all those people that I have mentioned, and sustained change management. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Let me allow you, Philip, to be the very last one for that killer conclusion. Over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Zolani. I have two minutes. I'll make the best of it. I just want to touch on to what you said about change management, because I think that's an important aspect and something that I'd like to close with. We tend to look at mSCOA and see the reports and the accounts and the segments and the software applications and all these other things. But at the heart of mSCOA are people. And as a collective, we need to recognize that and invest in the people that we work with as colleagues, team members. And you can do that through leadership, training, collaboration, accountability. All these things will lead to mSCOA becoming more than a compliance requirement. We need to embrace what we're busy with, and today's session was incredibly informative, especially for me. But something that I realized is that mSCOA will become a powerful tool in our quest for better corporate governance, better decision-making, and then ultimately better service delivery to our communities. So change management's critical. It's going to be very important, but there are a few aspects that we mustn't ignore. And most importantly, as a people, as a collective, let's embrace the challenge. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity.
On that note, to our audience, thanks once more for embracing us with your presence, your engagements in attending this webinar. Be on the lookout. As I've said, we've got different series, webinar series. Part 1 for mSCOA will be coming soon again. As to how soon, but we've got 4 webinars that will be focusing on mSCOA, and this being the second. And you don't want to miss the third webinar and also the fourth webinar. And to my panelists, as I've indicated, we will not have this successful webinar, judging by the comments, the questions that have come through, in ensuring that we drive a meaningful conversation. And of course, the key collaborator in this webinar series being National Treasury. And as you can see, platforms of this nature do assist even those who might have not heard some information, understanding the processes and understanding basically where we are with the evolution of mSCOA. We do thank for reaching out to say let's collaborate and run this mSCOA series on implementation. And of course, our platinum sponsor in business engineering and our partners in SIGFARO, SALGA, CIMAM, IMSA, and of course, ILGM. My name is still Zonyane. As I conclude, I believe I will see you and engage with you in our future webinar series. At this point, it's goodbye from me and enjoy what's left of today.